Please welcome our next speaker, Tanya, a CE CRM Program Manager. Today, she will be presenting Eliminate Legacy Batch Interfaces and Move to Dual Write. Please stick around after Tanya's session for a live Q&A.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for voting for my session for DynamicsCon. I'm here today to talk about how to eliminate legacy batch interfaces and move to dual write. My name is Tanya Regna, and I'm the Dynamics 365 CE Program Manager for Western Computer. I've been working with Dynamics for about 12 years, both in CE as well as in the finance space. So I'm excited today to talk about some of the different options Microsoft is moving to as far as integrating these solutions together. What is dual write? Dual write is a transaction-based solution that provides the real-time integration capabilities between the Dynamics CE apps, sales, customer service, marketing, and the finance and operation apps. By streamlining the integration process, organizations are able to transfer their data between applications, thereby providing all the departments the most up-to-date information about their customers and their business. By keeping in line with the low-code, no-code principle and making F&O data available to Dataverse, the dual write apps can be used to create bi-directional integration within these apps. Some of the key features of dual write are synchronous and bi-directional data flow between the applications, support of the system during online and offline asynchronous modes, the ability to sync initial data between the applications. So if you already have the two systems in place and you want to try to synchronize the data, you're able to actually do that for existing data as well. You can also customize and configure alerts and thresholds to subscribe to for notifications, and an intuitive user interface for filtering and data transformations. When the dual write app source package is installed, Dataverse tables will have new concepts and entities such as companies and parties, which we'll look at in a little bit. These concepts help the applications to interact seamlessly with the finance and operations apps. Over time, dual write will continue to expand in the future to support more scenarios for on-hand inventory, field service, project operations, and much more. The framework is highly extensible and accommodates customer-centric business data exchange through just a few additional clicks.
All right, now let's take a look specifically at one of the use cases I mentioned. Let's walk through how dual write can support a streamlined sales process. For this environment, I've already configured dual write, but the steps are fairly straightforward. And at any point in time, we can go ahead and click on the health check to check the status of the steps, confirm that the required solutions have been installed, check that the application users have been enabled, and double check to see if there's any additional access or processes that need to be updated. So you'll see here that we've got all checks and our health status is correct. Once our health status is accurate and the access has been provisioned, we then will be applying the solution. Again, in this case, I've already applied the solution, but this is the entity maps that allow you to send the data between F&O and CE. In this table mapping, you can see I'm tying together customers from F&O to accounts within CE. And you'll notice when I click on filter, it's actually filtering which accounts are coming over. So as part of your personalization or as part of your configuring of the dual writes, not only are you able just to map entities and tables, but you are allowed and able to provide filters to which data you want to synchronize between the systems. This is an area where instead of integrating prospect accounts or having a process that maybe you need to go through to identify which customers and records should go into F&O, you can implement that in CE and filter on those specific attributes. Also, as part of the implementation of dual write and turning on the synchronization, you have the ability to turn on either what's called an initial sync or a full sync. An initial sync allows you to take data from siloed systems and integrate them one time to bring maybe missing data from F&O into CE or missing records from CE into F&O and marry them up. If you do not want to run an initial sync for fear of creating duplicate records, you can just turn on a sync to run from that point forward. So again, another step in turning on those synchronizations is, do you want to run an initial and true up the records, or do you want to run just from that point forward? Another process also when thinking about moving from your batch processing over to dual write. When I take a look at CE, as part of that orchestration solution, again, and some of those managed solutions that are installed in part of the implementation process, there are some forms and tables that are provisioned, as I referenced earlier. One of those forms on the account record is called the customer master. And as you can see here, if you're not familiar with CE, there's some new fields that have been added. We have fields such as customer group ID. We have a tab that is called accounting, and it allows you to relate information from F&O that finance may control over to an account manager or salesperson. So really giving the unified view of data from one system to another. So if accounting maintains whether an account is supposed to be on hold, what their credit limit is, what their credit rating is, all of that can be managed in F&O. And then using dual write, you can have it update real time or near real time to CE for that visibility. Also, as part of orchestration solution in dual write, we now have the concept of company in CE. And the company is that legal entity that you work with in F&O. So this allows us to do multi-company, multi-currency, another difference between Data Integrator. And you're really able to define not just what the companies are that you're integrating and synchronizing, but who are the users that are part of those companies. So if you have different business units or different entities, that you have different salespeople that are assigned to different company teams, you are also able to configure that within CE, and that is supported by dual write. When I look at this account, I have a quote here for them. And you'll notice, again, some new tabs, as I mentioned earlier. We've got integration preview. So now, as part of your quoting process, if your salespeople need to define what is the requested delivery date, what is the requested shipping date, are there other specific information that are part of the process of quoting in F&O? Maybe you need it for demand planning, any type of manufacturing cycling. You're able to add those either to the account record and have them map, or your salespeople are able to add them manually. But you'll notice here, my quote is already over in F&O. And as I add lines to it, the quote in F&O will get updated as well. If I had any type of special pricing, I can also retrieve that from F&O. So we can keep, again, that pricing in sync if you have pricing for your customers, any specific information like that that's relevant, that can also be added. So I'm going to go ahead and activate my quote. And as this is processing, when I refresh my quote in F&O, you'll notice those lines are here. So again, the near real-time integration of pushing and pulling data back and forth to keep everybody with the visibility of where things stand in a process. As a salesperson works through their quote, as they work with their customer, again, if they need to price the quote, they've got new pricing, special pricing. If they need to be able to check inventory on hand, that information can also be requested and turned on through dual write. So if you're being able to give the salesperson visibility into what are those on-hand inventories. So you'll notice by company, by product, they can go ahead and do that request and have visibility so that they can best support your customers through that process, never really leaving CE, being able to do what they need to from a sales side within the environment that they're comfortable with. Once the quote is accepted, the next step would then obviously be to create an order. And what you'll notice when this order is created in CE, because again, we have dual write turned on, a lot of the fields are locked down. So now this record has become read-only. And the status and the updates of this record are now going to be managed within F&O. So as your order goes through the fulfillment process, as the order goes through the pick, pack, ship process, you'll see here we have order 22. And now the next process of fulfillment is managed in F&O. And then it's updated back to CE. So now you've been able to reduce redundant efforts. Your salespeople are entering their quotes. They're able to submit orders, and then it's able to flow directly into F&O near real time with the pricing, quantity, requested information that a salesperson manages or a customer may have submitted. You'll notice now because I have fulfilled that order in F&O, my status and processing status were both updated in CE. Now, thereby giving visibility to a salesperson of where is my order in the fulfillment process, supporting if you have a customer service team leveraging CE, being able to provide the status to a customer of it's been picked, it's been packed, it's been shipped, and really giving the visibility to your organization of where things are, thereby reducing duplicate efforts, streamlining processes, and really giving one central location for people to go in, enter the data, and support your customers. This is just one example of how the near real-time integration of dual write can be used to replace the batch processing of Data Integrator. There are obviously many other templates and processes that can be enabled to support your organization. As I mentioned earlier, similar process could be used for purchase orders to support field service and different other RMAs that support your customer service team. So really, there's a lot of other processes that can be implemented, but this is just one example of how dual write can replace batch processing.
Because dual write is enabled and configured from within finance and operations, administrators are managing it within apps they're already familiar with. Since every business is different, administrators can modify and customize the data queries and field mappings easily and intuitively. Here's an example of the customer to account mapping from finance and ops to common data service or one of the CE apps. In addition to editing the queries and mappings, dual write also gives you the ability to create data transformations and edit the direction that the data will flow. Here you'll see that credit limit is bidirectional and transferring from finance and ops to CE, but in one application, they are option sets of yes, no, and in the other, they have the value sets. Here are some examples of standard scenarios where you could use dual write to integrate your systems. As I said earlier, the organization and company hierarchy from F&O into the CE apps, your integrated customer and vendor master, unified product master and on-hand availability and details, integrated prospect to cash processes, integrated procure to pay process, including vendors and purchase orders. Additional custom table mappings are able to be created, and Microsoft is continually adding to the standard solutions. Because F&O is the financial system, organization is a core concept there. As part of the installation of the dual write solutions, the organization hierarchy data structure is added. Then the integration templates are also provisioned. Here you'll see some of the additional entities that are provisioned within the Dynamics 365 CE apps on top, and the finance and operations apps entities that they integrate with. Because we have a separate vendor and customer master as part of the dual write implementation, these tables are separate and you are able to manage them and their relationships independent of each other. An example of where the customer and vendor master comes in handy: imagine you have a customer that relocates and they want to change their billing and shipping address information. The customer contacts your customer support representative and requests a change of address. That representative finds the customer's record in 365, updates the billing and shipping address, and saves the data. That new billing and shipping address automatically syncs back to finance and operations in real time. In a prospect to cash scenario, an existing customer emails the sales rep that they would like a quote for a product that's currently under a special promotion. The sales representative finds the customer's record in CE sales, creates the quote, selects the specific product. Once the quote is saved, it's automatically created in F&O. The sales representative now clicks Price Quote, And any trade agreements applied to this customer or product in F&O will update back to CE real time. You'll notice here the highlighted section. There's some new added fields as part of dual write on the quote record for on-hand inventory and price quote. In asset management, you now can enable both internal assets as well as customer assets to be managed. Imagine your organization has both those internal assets of maintenance trucks and external assets of trash compactors for their customers. Through Dynamics 365 Supply Chain, maintenance plans have the ability to create the planned maintenance events for those internal trucks. Leveraging Dynamics 365 field service agreements and work orders, you can schedule maintenance for your external assets. By combining all the assets and the service schedules based off when the work is completed and not predetermined schedules is very important for visibility and resource allocation. In the procure to pay scenario, you have field technicians working on a work order. They need to submit a purchase order for parts to complete the repair. In Dynamics 365 Field Service, purchasing agents can create the PO for the vendor with those parts and associate it to that work order. The purchase order is then synced with F&O. When the parts are received, the receipt is created, and that PO in F&O is also updated. When the bill is received, the work order can be closed out, and that purchase order in F&O can be paid. As you could tell from some of the information that I've provided already, Dual Write and Data Integrator are very different solutions that Microsoft is providing. While Data Integrator is great for when you need to do those one-time nightly scheduled batch interfaces, Dual Write is really the way to be able to empower your users and your organization to all have the same data real-time in the same space. Because they are separate tools and they are separate platforms, Microsoft has made it a very manual process to migrate from Data Integrator to Dual Write. Unfortunately, the prospect to cache solution that you've downloaded as part of AppSource does not play well with the Dual Write orchestration solutions that I mentioned earlier. So Microsoft does have some steps that you can take to move from one platform to the other. I look forward to answering any questions you have. Please put them in the chat, and I can't wait to talk more with you in the live sessions about Data Integrator and Dual Write.
Hi there, everyone. Thanks for coming to the session to learn more about Dual Write and Data Integrator and the differences and how you can migrate from one to the other. Hopefully that was helpful, and we can go ahead and answer any questions that anyone may have. So please feel free to type them in the chat. Also, welcome. Joining me is Rob. Rob, I want to say hi. And
yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Awesome. Looks like we might have a couple questions coming in.
Yep. All right, so yeah, we have one here. Is there an upgrade path if you already are using Data Integrator and want to use Dual Write?
Currently, there is not. Currently, the path is to actually back up your data, export the prospect to cache solution, and then reinstall orchestration solution and move forward. So we've got a question: what error handling capability is available for Dual Write, and are there logs available when it fails? Does it automatically implement and retry logic? That's a great question. So the error handling is actually instant because these are transaction-based and near real time. If the integration does happen to fail, it does give the error message to the user that something is a mismatch or something has happened. You can then dig in also at the level of the actual integration to try to see what is happening. But it is transaction-based, so it is that real-time integration. That real-time error logging.
We actually have another one here, Tanya, when you're ready. If there
Sure.
are no other questions there. Are all of the syncs bidirectional by default?
No, some of them are one-way. For example, data sets that you would really want to maintain in F&O, you would have them be one direction. So sales tax codes, warehouses, anything that really ties to your ERP, by default would be a one-way integration.
Okay.
Looks like we've got another one. Have we seen a lot of our clients using dual write yet? Or is the wait and see approach so far? Rob, you want to answer that one?
Read it back one more time.
Sure. Have we seen a lot of our clients using dual write, or is it wait and see?
No, we're getting a lot of it actually now. It's since it became GA, about a little over a year ago. We're definitely seeing a lot of folks who are using Power Platform in general wanting dual write. So it's been a pretty common thing.
Yep, I agree. It's really, even from Microsoft's standpoint, Data Integrator is great if you have some batch updates that you need to do, but they really are encouraging the dual write, transaction-based integrations so that you can keep your systems in sync. Error handling for the initial sync is different to the real-time error handling. That is correct. When you do an initial sync in the system, it does run through existing data and it confirms that any pre-required tables are running. It does double check to make sure any pre-required mappings are there, and it does try to send the data back and forth. After that, the initial sync is turned on and your jobs are running. That's when you do get the transaction-based real-time errors.
Got another one that popped up here. If I create customers or vendors in both CE and finance and operations, will dual write keep the account numbers sequential?
It does not. Because the number sequence is maintained in the separate systems, the recommendation is that you have either a different numbering schema. So if your customers are created in CE, you start them with a C. And if your customers were created in F&O, you would start them with an F. Or the other option is using a different start number for the CE by leveraging the auto number field. Another question that is up here is, are there scenarios where you prefer Data Integrator over dual write? Currently, field service is not supported in the dual write solution yet. There are some entities, specifically work orders, that doesn't have those capabilities yet. So on field service implementations, we are looking at using Data Integrator because then we just can do some batch jobs at the evening as opposed to keeping those real time. It's definitely a newer tool that Microsoft is constantly rolling out. We're currently also implementing it a lot. It's used leverage with project operations. So if anyone has any project operations, implementations or projects that they're looking at, that is the integration solution that comes as part of it, that leverages keeping the data in sync. So one of the questions, once I turn on dual write, will it always be on my mind, or is it something I won't have to spend any time worrying about? Because the errors are transaction based, I've found that once you get it live, once you get it figured out, it is something that you can kind of be rest assured that it's working as long as they're following processes. Unlike Data Integrator, where I've seen some issues where you have to check the logs in the evenings, or you don't really know it's broken until something's not updating. It is the type of thing that once you get it built, like I said, it is that transaction-based error, so you get to see where they're failing a little bit quicker. If Data Integrator is sticking around, it needs a new name. I completely agree, and it is sticking around. Microsoft is, because they are rolling out, also are encouraging people to use virtual entities. They are definitely keeping it as that batch interface data tool as opposed to the real time. So they're encouraging organizations to look at where you can leverage both. And Data Integrator, is definitely a way to kind of lighten the load of those real-time processes.
All right, Tanya, I'm getting one here. It's
Sure.
if I already have CE and F&O, how can they use Dual-Write to integrate and not create duplicate records? That would be, I guess, using bootstrapping, right? Did you want to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yes, it is bootstrapping. There's a process that Microsoft has some documentation around where when you use Dual-Write, it implements the concepts of company in CE that we don't currently have, where you can tie legal entities to different companies in CE. And because if you're using just a standard CE implementation, you wouldn't have a lot of those entities, also ledgers and some of the others that come with Dual-Write. So the bootstrapping process allows you to update those records and tie the company data before you do the initial sync so that you can understand where you may have duplicates. So that's definitely the way to go there. Sorry, there's one here, Rob. I don't know if you can see the chat. In F&O, the financials are maintained by company or legal entity. So logging into USMF will not show me the financials. Not sure if you've heard boundaries by company in CE. I know CE is something like business units, but I don't think it's the same as company F&O tax sense. How do you get Dual-Write to work with this company versus business units, both applications? So that's a great question. And when you set up the companies in CE, because that does come as part of the Dual-Write, you do actually assign users to be part of those companies. So similarly in F&O, where you're able to assign users to see the different data aspects, we can do that in CE, and then they pick which company that they're looking at as far as creating a new account, contact, quote, or order. And then you can tie those companies to business units and still be able to separate and segment security roles that way. Any other questions? We've definitely run into some gotchas as we go through. One of the challenges in implementing Dual-Write that I've seen, and Rob, we just ran into this on one of our recent implementations, specifically around sales orders. There's a lot of requirements when a salesperson puts in a sales order for items where they have to put in warehouses and sites. And one of the things we see on the CE side is those required fields that are in F&O aren't always marked required in CE. So we run into a lot of troubleshooting on some of those integrations.
Well, and a lot of times too, Tanya, the CE consultants also want to be aware that you may have to make those fields visible too. A lot of cases, the end user will have to select which warehouse it's coming from, like you said, because it's required, but it comes over as part of that solution, the Dual-Write solution, but it's not made visible to them as well as not even being marked as required. So they get errors thrown that, hey, we're not able to save this record or update this record. Well, that's why.
Yep. No, absolutely. And that's a great point of making the fields even not just required, but making them visible, because those that have used CE know that we don't usually use warehouses and sites on sales order lines. But it is because of its requirement in F&O, we do have to update the CE application. So there are some of those form modifications that you will have to do when implementing Dual-Write, just to be able to capture all of the required data or set defaults, which isn't always preferable.
In some cases, if depending on the nature of your deployment, you could, to Tanya's point, maybe elaborate a little bit more, that you could kind of default them so that way the user doesn't have to see it. Because one of the things we run into a lot, Tanya, is that the CE users specifically, they see a whole bunch of new fields on there and they have no idea what they are. It confuses folks. And so in smaller deployments where there may be one company, say in F&O, you can go ahead and get away with defaulting that and hiding them. So that way you could still process a transaction without really making your users go crazy.
Yep, absolutely. It looked like I froze. Am I back?
Now I can see. Yeah.
You can see me still? Okay, sorry. There was a message that I had frozen. Let me just double check. Yes, that's just it, right? It's part of that change management too, as we're implementing dual right, is understanding, where do you have to add additional scoping, or you have to add additional changes to be able to accommodate those requirements. All right, we have another question. If a customer in F&O has a transaction posted against it, then it cannot be deleted. For an F&O customer that is integrated with CE, can this customer be deleted in CE if no transaction exists in CE, but it exists in F&O? No. So the jobs do run on delete as well. So if in F&O it has transactions posted against it, it cannot, it can't be deleted in either system.
Do you have to be a sysadmin to enable dual write? I would say yes. You need to have sysadmin roles assigned, not just in the Dataverse, but also in F&O.
Yes. Sorry, Rob. It looks like they're having technical issues hearing us.
I got you loud and
Interesting.
clear. So
Okay, that's good. Sorry if you are having issues. I'm sure this will be recorded, and we can definitely get the link to it out. One of the questions: would a Canvas app tied to F&O data source? Would a Canvas app, tied to F&O data source but exposed in CE for entering sales orders create a better user experience in getting around some of those requirements? That's a great question, Justin. There's definitely a better experience on entering sales orders in F&O. I'm not going to try to say that CE does a great job. I haven't looked into that, but that's a great question and a great idea to look into. So I guess my answer to that one is I'm not sure. Yeah, there's definitely technical issues. Sorry about that, everyone. It's looks like it keeps flipping on and offline. Rob, any other thoughts as we're going through? I know we ran into one scenario. Actually, this was one limitation we have seen, and I can't remember how we got around it. Maybe you'll recall. We had sales orders that were marked as posted in CE, and they were trying to make changes to the sales order in F&O, and they were failing on sync because you can't change the CE sales order after it was updated. But I can't recall how we were able to get around that one.
I actually don't recall that one.
Yeah. There's also some interesting ones we've seen recently. In F&O, they were unable to post the free text invoice because the out-of-the-box filter was requiring the invoice to have a sales order number. So we had to make some changes where they didn't require a sales order number to have the invoice flow into CE. So there are definitely situations where Microsoft has set some preset filters, or Microsoft has set up a persona that they think should work for all organizations. And sometimes as you go through and test your use cases, it does require modifications to those filters or modifications to the integration so that it meets the needs of the project or the requirements. The approach to addresses is an issue. The global address book party does not address some of the elements where the systems handle the same data differently. I completely agree with you, Steve. I know that I'm part of the preview for the global address book party solution that's supposed to be, I believe it's 4.1 is released, but Microsoft is definitely working on that. They've identified that as a gap between the systems. It's a significant gap, as many of us that work with both of the systems can see that the fact that addresses in CE is nowhere near capable or as robust as what F&O has and needs to be able to have multiple shipping addresses, billing address, and all of that. So I know that that global address book party solution, like I said, I believe it's 4.1 is the GA date. It's supposed to accomplish a lot of that. But definitely, it's something that Microsoft has a team working on, developing and constantly rolling out enhancements too. So I don't know if you've seen that solution at all, Steve, and if you have any feedback there on, other ways to handle addresses as it comes to dual write. That is an area where, by the way, I did use Data Integrator to address the address issue. What is your experience with data deployments, deploying F&O data to UAT? How does this impact dual write data linked to CE environments? So the recommended approach is that for every F&O instance that you have an aligned CE instance. So if you have F&O UAT, then you have an aligned CE UAT, and you use dual write to connect those two environments. Otherwise, you run into those scenarios where you potentially have to do the bootstrapping, in that you now have an existing CE database that has data, and you have an F&O database that you're loading data to, and you'll end up with duplicate records. Definitely great questions. Feel free to keep them going. I know the video is short, so love to answer questions or see other people's feedback. The way we've handled it is to run up the live customer C and align the data, create country and state lookups, align the. Yes, so I completely agree with country and state lookups coming over from F&O. Obviously, that's just a significant gap that CE's had always, is that your country and state are free text fields. You let the people that need the most control have the least when putting in information. And so that's similar to what you just had listed, and then you align your field sizes and kind of line it all up. The other option is I've created a custom entity for addresses and then map it to the custom postal address in F&O, and then that was how we were able to keep them in sync. So similar to kind of the global address book, we just created an entity or a table that mimicked the global address book. Excuse me, the customer postal table in F&O. Justin, you like asking the fun ones. How has Microsoft support been when you've had dual write issues? I think it depends on. It's changed. It's gotten better. In the beginning, it was a challenge because Microsoft really wasn't clear with what team was supporting dual write, whether it was being supported in F&O, whether it was something that was being supported through Power Apps, similar to kind of how Data Integrator could be supported in different places, or whether it was supported in CE. So now when you put in your dual write issue, as soon as you put it in, they do try to pinpoint where where the nature of the problem is, and then they will direct you to the right product group. You could tell we spent a lot of time with Microsoft support on dual write.
What about data transformations? Tanya. Does it allow you to configure data transformations? If you were going from CE, maybe the different option set values, you're trying to pass a different data type.
Yeah. It gives us some, some high level. I think it does a transform option, so you can transform, like if you grab your option set values and then you can map them to the F&O values. Obviously, it's an area that you do have to keep in mind as you're adding new values to CE to any of your option sets. You do have to make sure you go back into those jobs and update those transforms. When it comes to GUIDs or lookups, if you define the account name or some of the different fields that you want to be able to capture as part of your integration key, it will allow you to transform, on the account. Instead of grabbing the GUID, it'll grab the account name. As far as it does give you some visual cues when you're mapping. So it'll indicate to you if you're trying to map a currency field to a text field or vice versa. So it'll either error out or it'll tell you that you've got to do a transform to have that happen. I'm trying to recall any of the other transforms that we've done. Or you can also set defaults. So again, in areas in CE where it's not a relevant field, and you just need it set in F&O, you definitely can set default fields to have it pass that way. If you only do business in the US, you can have the country field set, to match the country field as you have it set up in F&O. Any idea when dual write will work with field service? Sorry, John, I didn't see that. My understanding is it's on the roadmap. I was speaking with Sagita not too long ago, and the real big push lately around dual writes has been project operations. So they're slowly rolling out enhancements to dual writes. To field service for dual write. I know that there is a partner seminar on April 6th that I believe they have some updates for us on, and they're slowly rolling out enhancements to supply chain. So we now can do purchase orders, purchase order lines, and some of the other vendor-related transactions, and that's now supported through dual write. So it does look like they're enhancing more and more, but they haven't given us a timeline yet or a date as far as when field service will be fully supported with dual write.
Are there any limitations around the number of records per run that you're aware of? I thought it was around like 500,000 or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I've seen.
I thought it was something like that, if I remember correctly.
Yep, as far as the single threaded runs, that's what I've seen. I'm not sure if they have any plans to change that or how they update that.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be a limitation there, but it's pretty high, I think.
Yep. What are the areas of F&O other than field service does dual write not work with? I don't know, to be honest. I don't know if it's as much if dual write does not work with on the F&O side. It's the entities in CE that have to have the organizational data applied. And that's a lot of where we have that limitation. So when you go in, when you have dual write enabled and you go into a quote or a sales order, you'll see that you have to pick the company. So the F&O legal entity that sales order or quote ties to, they haven't added that to the field service solution yet. And they haven't updated those tables. And so that's really where it's on the CE side, doesn't have that multi-company capability yet. And that's why it's not supported with dual write. So I'm not sure is it so much, like I said, it's the F&O that's not supported, but the CE side. Deploying customized mappings to other environments is kind of painful. Any thoughts? Deploying customized mapping. Florian, I'm going to have to ask if you can, are you saying if you're trying to move it from one solution to another or one environment to another? So you've customized it and you moved it around so from a dev to a UAT? I'm going to go with that's what that means. So I have not done it yet because I honestly couldn't figure out how. Perfect. So I couldn't figure out how, according to Microsoft, you are supposed to be able to export your whole solution and then import it into another F&O environment. So that's what Microsoft says the recommended approach is you take all your customizations and then you're supposed to be able to create a solution, export it, and apply it to your next environment. But like I said, I couldn't figure out how, and I agree with you, it's extremely painful to set it up in one environment, and then when you're ready to test or have it deployed, that you have to go kind of create all of those customizations again. Thank you, Steve, for that link. Any other questions? Have you tried using virtual entities to bring in F&O data? I haven't yet because, to be honest, I am mostly focused on CE and solution architecting, tying CE and ERPs together. I know that it is on the roadmap, or it's in some of our projects on the F&O side to have them leverage that, but I personally haven't worked with virtual entities yet. Thank you, everyone.